You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast.
All right, folks, what is happening? Hope everybody out there is having a wonderful, wonderful night. Of course, we have been, yanked off of YouTube for some reason. Our live streaming privileges have been revoked for no apparent reason. No explanation was given. We did have our live stream from last night pulled down, and then I appealed that. We won the appeal. They put it back up. They demonetized it, of course. But anyways, live streaming on X or YouTube is not happening right now. So it is what it is. All right. I want to welcome everybody to another episode of the Dangerous Liberty Podcast. We got a great guest on tonight. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit like, subscribe, all those things, share our content. We always appreciate it. And we do these live so that you guys can jump in on the conversation. We want to hear from you. So that's what it's all about. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring on Chase. And I apologize for my voice tonight. But anyways, Chase, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on, man. Look forward to talking to you.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Doing well, man. So Chase, also known as Green Beret Nap Time on X. Make sure you guys go follow him. As a matter of fact, all of his links to all of his social media are down in the description below. So go give him a follow. Chase is a fellow Green Beret. And if you will, Chase, just introduce yourself to everybody. Let everybody know who you are, and we'll kind of take it from there.
Yeah. Hey, guys. Yeah, I'm a former third group guy. Did just under 14 years, got out in 23. Did some things, failed at a couple of things, and, moved on. It is what it is. But then, X was just kind of one of those places I would go to just unload a little bit, little knowledge thrown around here and there. And then I like arguing with people. So, it was always a great, outlet for that. And then it just kind of exploded. I did some analysis on a few different things and then started putting out some papers and started doing some stuff in it and gained a following. And I got some pretty awesome followers and so it's been a fun road so far. And we're kind of rolling through.
Nice, man. No, look, I think it's really important that we get more veterans' voices out there. I think they provide a unique perspective. Having people that have gone and fought for our country, and I think it's especially important for combat vets not to undermine anybody's service out there that you didn't go to combat. I'm not saying that. That always gets twisted around on me for some reason. Right. But I do think it's really important that we get people that have skin in the game, right? I think one of the things that keeps me grounded is, and I'm sure you experience the same thing, man. It's like I've lost lots of friends. I've also seen how fleeting life is and like what is really important. Money's not important. I didn't go there to, I went overseas, not even necessarily to fight for whatever, I don't know, whatever they were pushing at the time, right? The why we were there, but to fight for my country and to make sure that one of the things that was always prominent in my mind was like, I want to be here so my kids don't have to be. And I got to be honest with you, I don't even know that I would recommend to any of my kids to join the military. I think we're coming back. Things are changing for the better for right now, but I don't know how long that's going to stay. So, what's important is the principles in which this country is founded. And I've had the opportunity to travel enough to realize how unique this country actually is. And no, man, I'm glad your voice is out there. I'm glad you're doing well on X. I just started on X. I'm not the big X user. I want to expand that, especially all the censorship that we've seen on YouTube, trying to build some redundancy in there. But no, man, it's great to have you. So thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. No, it's real important. I mean, it's important too for conservatives to stand up and kind of start, actually having a voice and really being heard on truth and like what America is actually about. One thing I talk about often is that conservatives are just, we don't need the government's help. So we don't feel like we need to get involved. We don't feel like we need to like talk about it. And we just want to do our own thing, and we want to build our families and, do all that. And we have to do both. We have to get it to now where we can't just sit back and let this go any farther than it's already gone. I mean, you have to get involved in school boards if you're going to send your kids to public school, because at this point you have no idea what they're going to be exposed to or taught. And it's almost to the point where like I'm my little babies, I'm pretty sure I'm going to try to homeschool them. If everything works out how I want, before they get to school age, like it might be one of those that goes that way. And so that's what, kind of my account's kind of about pushing the truth and pushing, what's really going on, and giving a little bit of geopolitical analysis and some things that, like, why are we making up all this nonsense, and why are we believing propaganda that's been debunked for 70 years? Like all of a sudden it's back, and people just see this they'll like pull up an old, old newspaper article, and they'll be like, this says this. And you're like, well, yeah, but we also know who wrote that. And it was propaganda for the Nazis or for the Tsarists or for, the Soviets. Like it wasn't real. And now you're acting like it's real. So.
Yeah, no, going back to your homeschool thing, that was one of the things I talked about. I kind of went on a tangent last night. So one of my kids, my oldest kid, I actually have two older kids down in Texas, but my 15-year-old son, he's in homeschool, and my 11-year-old, most likely once he gets to, we have actually a pretty good middle school, and we're out here in West Virginia, in a very conservative area of West Virginia for the most part, and so we're not exposed to some of the things that I've seen. But even in a much more conservative school district with really good teachers, and probably, half the teachers at least are probably Republicans or conservatives, which, is a big percentage when it comes to, we still see some of the other stuff being pushed. And I really do think that the public school system is the apparatus that is going to be used to destroy our country. I really do. And I think they've done a really good job with it. So that's definitely, you're absolutely right. We got to get it more involved in local politics and schools, and, whether it's taking your kid out of the public schools, whatever it takes. Right. Yeah. I'm so concerned for the country in so many different ways. And, there is a lot of propaganda. And, I know, I kind of see some of the things that you're defending. We'll just kind of talk about it right off the bat. There's definitely, again, this big push against Israel and demonizing Israel and all these things. And look, I do think that some of these things some of these arguments are valid in a couple of different areas. I think some of it's absolutely propaganda. But I also think that, we are a nation that's $37 trillion in debt. And I want to quit sending money to most countries, to be honest with you. I do understand the strategic value of Israel. But the other thing that's most important to me is the ability for people to voice their opinions here in the United States. Believe it or not, folks, there are people that have an opinion that you can call Zionist or pro-Israel or whatever else, and they're not bad Americans. They believe what they believe because that's what they believe. And we used to actually promote that, you do your thing, you believe what you, and then, there's people out there that have a lot of criticisms for Israel that are not, captured by some deep, dark movement or anything else. We need a little balance on all those things. We need to have some sort of discourse so that we can actually flush out what's true and what's not. And then we can all decide for ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally, it's the way you can't look at everything black and white, and you can't look at everything as I agree with everything about this is happening. So, or if I agree with anyone or disagree with any one little thing, then now it's all out. Like that's not the way the world works, first of all. And I've been pretty vocal about, like, I'm fine. Let's end foreign lobbying. I don't understand why that's a thing that we allow anyway. And that would include Israel. But at the same time, we can also look at our what we're giving money to and what countries we are, and be realistic about it at the same time. So a lot of people, like, they talk about the 3.8 billion. So I did a full write up and did a bunch of research on, the ROI we get from Israel and is it worth it? Because this is what I do. So I see a narrative getting pushed, and then I want to go jump into it and decide for myself, hey, is this true or is this likely a narrative? Because if I can pick it apart and poke some holes in it, that I've done that in some other things and given that analysis, but then this is the one I've gotten attacked for the most. Like just the fact that I'm like, hey, this is actually not a bad gig for us. Like, am I saying Israel's perfect? No. Am I saying I agree with everything that they do? No. But guess what? I don't agree with everything the United States government does either. So like, let's be realistic about this, and let's just quash the whole there's an evil cabal of Jews that rule the world. Like, that's just like the fact that I'm having to tell people this right now. I'm like, dude, are we in a different is this the Twilight Zone? Like, it's just, that's what's really wild to me is if Israel wasn't a Jewish nation, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. We would, like, yes, people would gripe a little bit about the money, right? Because some people are just isolationists and don't think we should send any money anywhere, which,
right,
again, that's an argument you can make. And again, we are in debt, like astronomically in debt.
Right.
But one of the points I always like to point out too is that we're in debt because we put about almost 2 trillion, into welfare every year. Like, that's really why we're in debt. The 71 to 80 to 90 billion now that we're doing for foreign entanglements or whatever you want to call them, it's still a 70, 80 billion. It's a lot of money. But when you compare it to, 2 trillion, like, now, maybe we need to talk about let's revamp our welfare programs where we're giving it to people that are actually working and trying to better their lives and not just giving it, to everybody for any reason who applies, so.
Well, the problem is that the welfare system has turned into a retirement fund for able-bodied people. That's what's going on. And I see it, right? I mean, you see these people that are trying to look. I'll just tell you right now, I got family. I was born in the Detroit area. I didn't grow up there. I left there when I was around 10. I grew up in Texas, Beaumont, Texas. I know you're from Texas as well, aren't you?
Yep. Up north of Amarillo.
Nice. Point being, I still go back to Dearborn. And man, there's like this culture in Dearborn where everybody is scheming to get on welfare, to get on disability, to like it is, you go there and you see what's going on. And it's just like, man. And that's why it's one of the worst. Like, my dad still lives there and I'm always trying to get him to move out of there. I'm like, Dad, he's retired now. I won't say he's retired. Like, again, he's on welfare too. And I'm like, Dad, like, come. I've been all over the world. Like, Baghdad is better than freaking Dearborn Heights. Like, there's a lot of better places to live with more opportunities, with better weather, with all these things. And, the rest of Michigan is really nice, actually. But the fact is like, there's a culture here in the United States where people are trying to get paid for doing absolutely nothing. And that is being abused at levels that we've never seen before.
Right. There's entire families and generations that have never worked and have just been on welfare. Like, there's their parents did it, and now their kids, their grown adult kids now are on welfare the same way. And it's become like it's kind of a job for them to get money for free. Like, they're just doing that instead of actually working. And so I find that to be more detrimental to the United States than, I mean, like, am I a big fan of the Qatar stuff that's going on right now? One, no, because you've been to the Middle East. I've been to the Middle East. Like, we kind of know what the culture is, and we kind of know how that expansionist and that the militant Islam is. And that's what scares me, because, that if you look at it on paper, it's a good, and well, it's really not even an investment on our part. They're investing in us. They're paying us a lot of money. So we're getting a return out of it. But what does that leave us in the future? How much can we trust giving them the F-15s? How much can we trust, the base that we're going to have a lot of our technology on? Like, are we going to run red lines into that base and then take the chance of them ever, compromising that node? Like, where are we at with all this? So those are all questions that I try to, ask and diagnose these things. And like, let's actually critically think about some stuff and do some analysis, and not just, there's so many podcasts out right now. There's so many of these people, they have zero expertise in anything in their lives. They don't research anything. They're getting, they're finding tips, or they're getting emailed these things, and they're like, this must be true. Like the Candace Owen and the Egyptian plane, like it's like, guys, what are we talking about right now? So
yeah, and I can't even figure out, like, I've watched multiple of her episodes now, trying to, like, okay, so what's the conclusion here? Number one, there's so many easier ways to track somebody than like follow them around in a plane. Like it's not coherent. It doesn't make sense. And by the way, some of like I was looking at some of the charts, which I wish you would like publish so that you can actually analyze them and see what makes sense, what doesn't. And like, I'm not even seeing where Erica Kirk's planes are actually tracked in like the overlay is what she is suggesting it is. I do see some discrepancies in just what you can find. But anyways, I digress. I think you're right. Like we have so many problems here in the United States. Real quick, I did just want to stop right now, kind of talk a little bit. Folks, what we will do is Chase and I will talk a little bit, and then we will have a Q&A session. You guys can talk with us and give your points and opinions and questions. Disagreements welcome, but name calling is not going to be tolerated. If you can't talk like adults, this isn't the show for you. Super chats will be prioritized. We appreciate you guys that support the channel, but we will try to get to as many live questions as possible. Yeah, if you guys want to support us, we have memberships. If you want to support Chase, he has a Substack. Go check that out. I've already looked through a couple of his articles. Good, solid stuff. But yeah, all right. Chase, take it away. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I think so. Some of the stuff I've been working on recently, like we're talking about Israel, so we'll just kind of jump into that real quick. And I made some charts. I went through and I only pulled primary sources. So I pulled U.S. Data from our proposals, from budgeting offices. It's not from any media, and it's not from just anywhere in the world. And I put the sources down at the bottom. So it's State Department, Congressional Research Service, U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, JNS and Flame Analysis, the Basis Center reports, and some other statements by U.S. officials. So this is all official stuff. So I didn't just find this stuff and just make it up or bring, whatever. And I really went into it like, hey, so the reason I actually kind of wanted to jump into this is someone posted a meme that said that our return of investment from Israel is actually like 48 billion from the 3.8 that we give. And I was like, well, I mean, if that's true, that's pretty cool, but let's check it out and let's see. And so jumped in, and the ROI is very it's very good. And it's not just the hard part is not everything can be quantified and monetarily quantified to tell you like, hey, okay, what is this actually worth? Because like the intelligence that we get from them, for instance, their human networks in the Middle East and Central Asia are far beyond anything that we have capabilities to even match. And no one else can really match it either. Five Eyes can't do it. No one else can look at the Middle East, Northern Africa, up into Turkey, and then all the way to Central Asia, like Israel can. And that's just a pure fact and bottom line. So there's no embellishing that.
Sure.
And so how do you put a monetary value on a terror attack that stopped that, was a bomb that could have killed, anywhere from 50 to a couple hundred people? Like how much is the life worth? How much is the infrastructure that would have destroyed worth? Like how much is just the chaos and fear that is going to create? Like how much not having that is that worth? So it's really hard to put just a straight number value on some of that stuff, but you can put a number value on a lot of it. So some of the stuff I found is that the economic dividends, trade, jobs, and innovation that we get from them, from the joint projects is significant. It's around 55.7 billion. So obviously that's total two-way trade. And for a country of Israel's size, about the size of New Jersey with, 7-8 million people, they're up there, we're up there trade with them like we are with Colombia, with Switzerland, some of these other countries that we've had established trade with for a while. So again, we're doing pretty well from the trade standpoint. Obviously, two-way trade, that 55.7 billion isn't all ours. That's shared with Israel, depending on the different ways that all the trade goes. But that trade alone right there is about 255,000 American jobs in high-paying sectors and high-tech jobs. So we're not talking about McDonald's or just retail salespeople. Like, we're talking about actual jobs with, benefits, like really good salaries, and 255,000. That's a lot, So yeah, just going through all of this. I mean, and then one of the things that I found, it was from General Alexander Haig, who talked about if we didn't have Israel, if we didn't have that proxy force in the Middle East that can act as basically a static aircraft carrier, right? So we don't have to move an aircraft carrier over there now to worry about the Suez Canal, to worry about anything in that area. That's 15 to 20 billion annually that we're saving from not having to put boots on the ground or put people on float in that area. So, that's a huge thing too. So you're talking, 11 plus billion equivalents of savings if you want to diagnose that. And then the fact that 75% of that 3.8 billion that we give them, and this is all a deal that was made, and once it's inked, they have to give 75% of that, or they have to buy 75%, use 75% of that to buy our own munitions, technology. They have to reinvest in R&D for new things too, so they can't just stagnate and only just buy. Like, they're constantly having to help develop new things. So that alone is pretty big. And then you go into the like I said, the intelligence is just, how do you price that? I mean, how do you price the technology or the information that we get that's going to save actual lives? And then just another thing, that they're hated, and they're the premier in the world for research and development. I mean, they reinvest 6.3% of their GDP into R&D, and that's the highest in the world. So that's way more than we do. It's more than South Korea, China. Like they're literally fighting for their lives every day and fighting for their own survival. So this is important to them. And, why would we not want to be allied with someone who is highly competent and who is really putting the work in too, just to look at it that way.
Sure.
So anyway, you look at it, you stack up the costs. The $48 billion claim, like I said, I can't 100% confirm that, but it is very reasonable that we're at a 3x to 10, between 3x and 10x, depending on how you want to look at the numbers and say, oh, those numbers don't count. We can't actually, you can mess with it a little bit, but you're looking at a 3x to 10x return on that investment. So that's pretty good. Anybody that does anything in the market.
I agree. I just want people to know too, like, you know what, this is, look, there's been a lot of things being said, some of this verifiably false about Israel. And what I wanted Chase to come on so we could have like a balanced discussion about this. And by the way, I'm welcoming anybody out there that wants to talk about the, anti-Israel discussion. And, so we can see, just a balanced discussion on this. I don't see that happening anywhere. Like, let's actually weigh the pros and the cons. And by the way, look, I'll just tell you right now, I'm honestly kind of indifferent toward Israel. I don't really care one way or the other.
Right.
To be honest.
Yeah.
I think we have so many other problems. You talked about that. You talked about the fact, like, one of the things I touched on last night, like, we don't have Jews coming in here and taking over entire cities like we do in Dearborn Heights. We don't have, like, to magnify them or turn it into such a hyperbolic problem. Like, I start getting real suspicious of a narrative. Like this is the big problem that we have right now. This is what you think our number one problem is. Anyways, the point here is like, anybody that wants to come on here and kind of give the counter narrative to what Chase is, I invite you. We'll talk about it, all those things. What I would ask you, Chase, is like, let's talk about, from your perspective, like, what are the actual downsides or some of the negatives that we have with our relationship with Israel?
I mean, the downsides is just the vilification, for being involved with Israel. I mean, anybody that's involved with them is going to get hit with that. I mean, negative things, I would like to see, dual citizenship in our government, and especially in any position that you're going to require a security clearance you have to renounce. I mean, Israel makes their people renounce their dual citizenship with another country if they're going to be in that kind of position. So we should be doing the same thing. So I'm 100% okay with that. And again, it's an alliance, and it's not a formal treaty alliance, but it is a strategic alliance, and it should be treated as such. They're not infallible. They're not gonna. It doesn't, like, we're doing this because we have shared goals and a shared ideology, and so it makes sense. So it's not like everyone's acting like this is some like high school friendship. Like, this is not like, we're not gonna stand by them no matter what. But at the same time, it is a beneficial relationship for us. So why would we not use it, and why would we not get the best everything we can out of it? And so that's my main thing is like you just said, we have so many other problems. Like, why are we worried about 3.8 billion is 0.056% of our annual budget. So it's not even 0.1% of our annual budget. And that's what we're focusing all of our time talking about. And I'm like, why are we doing this? Like, let's talk about the 60 to 70% that is really, flooding, that's really ruining our economy, that's creating the hyperinflation we're seeing in our food, right? I mean, just SNAP alone, like, how much is that raising food costs for all of us? I can't go to the grocery store and get, one or two nights of meals and a couple of little other things, odds and ends, milk, certain, eggs, all that kind of stuff, and pay under 150, 200 bucks. It's every time it's 200, 300 bucks just for a night or two of food. And I'm like, this is wild, So that's why. And so I get called all these, you just love Israel more than America. And I'm like, I don't at all. Like, that's crazy. I've never even been to Israel. I have buddies that have been to Israel, and, they've told me great things about it. But at the same time, that's not why I formulated my opinion this way. I formulated my opinion on this because of strategic geopolitical knowledge that I have. And just like you have, and you kind of understand that this relationship is important for now. But yes, we can always improve it. And yes, we can always tighten up a few things and make sure that, again, like I said, the dual citizenship, I don't mind dual citizenship. There's tons of dual citizenship in the United States. It's actually kind of a good thing, especially it gets good people. But it also, like I said, if you're going to get a security clearance, or if you're going to, be at some point in the federal government or somewhere where you're affecting, American lives, then yeah, I think you should have to renounce that other citizenship.
Or
so that
or you have access to classified or sensitive information, technologies, and things like that.
100%. So
look, and the other thing too, with all of our allies are like frenemies, right? Like we all spy on each other. Look, when I worked for the Department of State, I used to teach situational awareness, and I taught surveillance detection and things like that. And for some of the diplomats and some of the people that were being assigned in Israel, I would talk to them and I would say, look, you are going to be spied on in Israel. And some of them, I literally had, oh God, I can't think of the position, but anyways, basically the second in command for the ambassador there. And basically he was like, no, Israel doesn't spy on us. I'm like, are you serious right now? Like, they spy on us all the time. Like, absolutely. I do have a concern too about some of the IP and things like that. The fact is that all of these international relationships are nuanced, complex. And the thing that pisses me off right now about this, and again, no one is like, America first and foremost, always. But what's crazy to me is that when you go out there and somebody throws out some wild shit about Israel, and you just like say, that's not true, or you give a logical counter argument to that. It's like, you were paid $7,000. There was a thing going around. I've barely even brought up Israel. What I've talked about is some of the nonsense theories that are definitely coming out of social media. And because I'm talking about that, never even bringing up Israel, hardly ever. I don't think that Israel was involved, but that's just what I think. Like, there was this thing going around that I made $10 million from Israel. Like, first of all, like, I wouldn't be on the air anymore.
Yeah. I go to an island.
Secondly, like, folks, I can't say this enough. I would effing die before I took money from another country to give me some narrative. I would die before I took money from the U.S. government to change the narrative. Like, too many people that I know have died for the freedoms, and one of the number one freedoms in this country is the freedom of speech. I hold that sacred. I hold that dear. And guess what? I don't care if you're anti-Israel, pro-Israel, when you're trying to shut down other people in America, that's worth standing up for. If you're going to push bullshit on the pro-Israel side and push bullshit on the anti-Israel side, you need to be challenged. That's what we do in the United States. We have free discourse, we have competing ideas, and we can lay it out, have a good faith discussion about the policies of our country, and then we can sit back and let it sort it out. But like, lies should be challenged no matter where they're coming from. If they're coming from the government, challenge them. If they're coming from social media, challenge them. All we want is the truth. And I think that's one of the things that we're lacking in this discussion about Israel in general, amongst everything else. Like, everything is a psyop right now, one way or the other.
Yeah. See, so Ghost, you said, how much terror do they invite? Dude, they don't invite terror. Their existence, they want to be, Islam wants to destroy them, right? But if it was a Christian nation, guess what? What did they do to Lebanon from 60 and on? Lebanon was a Christian nation. And so if you go back and look, this is the other thing that one thing that my account and everything that I'm doing here forward is just kind of bringing history forward so that people can understand what actually happened and get away from all these meme narratives and these that somebody made to focus you on something else that like didn't actually happen, or the way that they've completely kind of revised what fascism is and how it started, and that, and they call it a right-wing ideology, and you're like, well, you label it that way because you want to push it, with close to the American right, but there was nothing even remotely close to the American right in Europe at that time. There was no political parties that were you could even say that had an ounce of power that were really even right wing. I mean, when Hitler took power, the top political parties were 3 socialist parties and 1 communist party. Those were the only ones that had any chance to win anything. And he hijacked one of those socialist parties and then used it to gain power. And then he got rid of everyone else, just as authoritarian dictators do. And so kind of bringing all that out, like, hey guys, this is not true. This way you're looking at history is not factual. And they again, if it was us, if we or if other Christians or even a secular government, was in Israel, they would still be trying to take it because they believe it's theirs. Despite Christianity being, born in the Middle East and flourishing, right? Since, then 600 years later, Muhammad creates Islam based off of tenets of both Christianity and Judaism, but so changed it into a warrior culture because he was a warlord at the time, and he saw the power that religion had over people, and so he decided to start this and kind of create his own thing. The course I used to run, that was one of the case studies we did as an actual revolution that we studied and we would talk about was Muhammad and how he gained power, and then and he couldn't actually win Jerusalem, so that's when he turned his sights to Mecca and kind of made that the holy site, because he realized that he wasn't strong. They weren't strong enough at the time to win that. So it's just understanding this history is like having a baseline knowledge at least is important, because that's why I'm able to do what I do. It's not because I don't have Charlie Kirk's brain. I can't recite you scripture. I can't recite you the Constitution verbatim like he could. He was one of those brilliant people that there's only a few every generation. But what I can do is I know history, and I've been an avid kind of studier of history since I was a kid. And so now when I see someone pushing something online and I'm like, that's not true. I know that's not true because, I don't know. I have to go look up and confirm, check some few things just to make sure. And so then I go in and I jump in and research it a little bit more. But I know at least enough to know that it's like, that's not, I don't think that's true. And then, and that's kind of the way it always ends up. And that's kind of how I just move through and do these write-ups and do these reports and to give this analysis on it.
So you're sitting here telling me that your view of the world is through your experience reading history, and it's not because you're paid by Israel.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not. No one pays me anything, and nor would I ever take money to do.
Yeah, I know.
This is my voice.
It's so ridiculous. Like, and this is my point. Is like the idea that when a response to just about everything now is like, it's either you're paid by Israel, you're a Fed, or whatever else. Look, that is just meant to shut down discussion without with being too lazy to actually give a counterpoint. Like there are good points on either side of this, and it should be discussed. It's a matter of foreign policy here in the United States. There's all the things with APAC. But like we also have the pharmaceutical industry that I think is doing much more damage to the United States than APAC, to be honest with you. We have a lot of other foreign countries that have similar pacts here in the United States. Like, we got to put some things in perspective and look at this and quit being misdirected. The fact that we have a country that is I think it's being invaded by Islamists. I do. And I do think that at the end of the day, Islam is not compatible with the United States principles. I don't think they're compatible with the Constitution. I think that is a much bigger threat and a bigger problem than what we're dealing with Israel. Like you said, no matter what the negatives are with Israel, I can see some positives too. Like you can't be an honest broker and not say that. What is your thoughts on the prosecution of the war in Gaza? Because I will say that is something that I've continued to watch and has evolved my stance on Israel, just as kind of like an objective observer. Mm-hmm. I also have some thoughts on, but anyways, I want to hear what you have to say, then maybe I'll respond to it a little bit.
I mean, I think you have to look at it the same way. I mean, one, war is war, right? Mm-hmm. So like that's the problem we're having is that 95% of the United States population has no clue what combat is, has never been anywhere around it other than seeing it on TV or seeing a movie or reading an article about it.
Sure.
So they can't you can't sit here and say, what it's like if you've never been there. And this is one of those things. It's not an argument of authority fallacy, because there are certain things that you have to actually have experience doing to actually talk about it and to actually understand it. So just like I couldn't have a very good argument with a nuclear physicist right now because I don't really know anything about nuclear physics. Right. And and even if I did study what I could online, I'm not going to reach the level of like what someone who has a PhD in it and did actual practical labs and did all kinds of stuff. So just we have to think about this. We have to look at this intelligently. And so the war in Gaza, have they done, honestly, from my perspective, I think that they tried to do it a certain way so they could get their hostages back, but not get super vilified for it. But then what it ended up doing is it protracted the war. It allowed Hamas to generate massive amounts of propaganda over the last 2 years,
sure,
to where every attack was quantified into this, into some, or every strike was quantified into some, malicious attack on civilians. And then people forget that, Hamas is a terror organization, and terror organizations hide behind civilians. That's the way they operate. They don't wear uniforms. They're not going down the street and meeting you in battle. They're hiding in murder holes, and they're cooking off IEDs, and they're waiting to kill you that way. And they're hiding, munitions outposts in hospitals or under hospitals. They're hiding them in schools, and they're doing that on purpose, so that they can win that
info war.
Yeah. Yes, the info war on it. And so when I see a lot of that, and now again, have there probably been some evil things that have happened from IDF soldiers to, and that yes, it's war, that certain people in the United States military did some horrible things in country too, because sometimes just evil people make their way in and want to do evil things. So does that make the entire U.S. military bad? No. Does it make the entire U.S. country bad? No. So it's we have to look at it the same way. Again, my thoughts on it, if they really wanted to win, I mean, I know they were trying to preserve the hostages, but I would have occupied Gaza entirely. I would have occupied it, and then I would have taken over the aid, and I would have taken over, and I would have done a massive amount of, I would let every reporter follow us in, and I would have been like, look, this is what we're doing. You know, if you're going to try to sit here and vilify us, like this is that we're going to take control of it all. And then we're going to show you that we're feeding them that, you know, but the problem is they tried to kind of do this quasi, you know, they wanted to do strikes. They also, but at the same time, they're sending boots on the ground a lot so that they aren't, you know, just bombing every building. But then at the end of the day, when you got 2 years of war and in a very small area, when bombs get dropped, they destroy things, you know? So I kind of see it from both sides. I see them, you know, I see they do roof knockers. Has the United States ever done a roof knocker to warn people that we're about to bomb it? Have you ever heard of that in RTTPs?
No.
So we haven't ever done that. So, you know, why are we holding Israel to this standard that no other country could uphold in a time of war? You know, like that's why when I hear like there's war crimes, there's this, there's that, and I'm like, you know what? Every war, there's going to be some war crimes because individual people can be shitty, and that's just the way of the world. And it doesn't mean that, you know, command told them to go commit a war crime. And then, you know, again, for the whole starvation thing, and the whole they're saying it's a genocide because they're displacing them and starving them. Not really the definition of a genocide. So that's kind of my qualms with that. But I have buddies that were over there, and you know, they were like, is this place perfect? No. Like they're, you know, is Gaza, is the way they're doing everything, trying to distribute the food perfect? No. But at the same time, like you've been over there, you know the convoys, you're
still subject to the chaos of war. I mean,
yeah. So they're, you know, with these aid sites they have with GHF and all this. And again, you can discuss whether GHF is great or good or not. And I honestly, I mean, I don't really care. What they had to do is they had to set up these sites where they could drop the aid, because we found out that UNRWA had actual Hamas terrorists on payroll being paid by the UN and the United States. We're literally directly funding Hamas terror. And they were taking all the aid that was coming, and they were giving it straight to Hamas and not giving it to the people. So then how do you rectify that without actually occupying? So it's so nuanced and it's so complex. You can't boil it down to like, oh, they did this wrong, so they're bad. You know, like it's one of those situations like we're in war, shit happens. You know, like what did we do to Fallujah before we went? You know, before we went in, we bombed for 5 days. We bombed, shelled, AC-130. We literally like.
out of it.
Yeah, we still had to go in and go door to door and to get all the terrorists. So it's an impossible situation to completely diagnose.
Well, here's my take on it right at the beginning. Number one, without a doubt, they prolonged handing over hostages. And Ghost Vision earlier brought up a comment right here that October 7th was a false flag by Israel. Okay, I don't think that it was a false flag. You might be able to make the case somewhere in there that it was a LIHOP operation, right? There's people saying this. Let's say that's true. Let's give them that bone. But the fact is that what we did have is we had terrorists come over into Israel from Palestine, kill over 1,000 Israelis, kidnap a bunch of Israelis, do horrific things to people in Israel, and all of that. And then and by the way, the real problem that I have is that they also kidnapped and were holding hostage American citizens, or at least people with both American citizens and people with dual citizenship. I got to tell you right now that's where I would draw the line if I was President Trump, or at the time Biden was in office. You know, we should at that moment we should have been deploying a couple thousand tanks right there on the freaking border and said, guess what? If we don't get the American citizens back in the next 5 hours or whatever it is, like we're rolling through and we're going to destroy everything until we get the American citizens back. That would have been my red line right there. And the fact is they delayed returning hostages for years. And that is the problem that I have with this. And that's when all the other arguments for me kind of fall by the wayside, because you're right. I mean, war is hell. And the other thing too is like we've gotten into this point to where we kind of expect these like humanitarian wars. And I got to tell you, that's my biggest problem that we have with the global war on terror is like we won the Iraqi war. I was with the initial invasion into Iraq. We won it in like what, a week or two or something like that. We won that war. But then what we did was we tried to play this kind of a mix of trying to do war, but also trying to do this humanitarian thing. And like those two things don't really mix. That's how you prolong wars. That's how you extend and enhance the amount of deaths on both sides. And that's what we did with Iraq and Afghanistan. Like we tried to do too much of both. Like you fight a war until the enemy no longer wants to fight and they want to unconditionally surrender. And then we go into just like we did with Japan. Like you can say whatever you want about the atomic bombs. Like we don't even understand the level of dedication and like the Japanese were ready to fight to the death. I believe that if we hadn't dropped bombs the way that we did, like that war would have extended much, much longer. I think in the scheme of it all, that was one of the most humanitarian things that we could possibly do because it ended it quickly. We took the fight out of them. And guess what? From there, we went on to the diplomatic relations side. We rebuilt relationship. We rebuilt Japan, by the way. And look, we've had a great relationship since. And I think we just try to do mixed. I just think we try to mix diplomacy and war, and you really can't. They're diametrically opposed.
No. Diplomacy should be used until war breaks out. And then, like you said, once war breaks out, and especially if it's a just war on your side. So Israel didn't start this war, and everyone's going to be like, they occupied, blah, blah, blah. They didn't occupy anything, dude. The UK technically owned that land and gave it to the UN to partition, and the UN partitioned it. And Israel accepted a two-state partition, giving up Gaza, giving up a lot of the West Bank, and Arabs immediately denied it. All Arab nations around surrounding them denied it. And then the day after they vowed sovereignty, or said that they were a nation now, they all five attacked them. And that's been a kind of consistent thing. Again, Israel's not perfect, but they're consistently surrounded by people that are trying to kill them every day, right? So so October 7th was the start of this war. Was it the start of every engagement that ever happened between Israel and Arabs? No, it wasn't. But it was the start of this war. It was, and you're right. And I kind of pose this as a way to think about it. Like, what would happen to, again, this is hypothetical. Everybody don't lose your minds. But what would happen if Mexico, state-sponsored, because Hamas is the government in Gaza. You got to remember that. They're an elected government in Gaza. And everyone's like, these, all Palestinians aren't evil because of that. I'm like, well, the Palestinian civilians were the ones holding all of the hostages for Hamas, whether out of fear or out of duress or out of just whether they really wanted help. I can't tell you that, but they were, and that was proven. So what if Mexico sent state-sponsored militants into the United States, murdered people in their own homes and at music festivals and just, at people doing their everyday lives? What would happen to Mexico at that point? Like the United States would have invaded and would have completely occupied the country, and hopefully would have actually prosecuted a war correctly for the first time since World War II. Right. But, we could talk about that all day long. But you brought up Japan. That's a great point. People always talk about the atom bombs, but the atom bombs killed less people than the fire bombs. We firebombed Tokyo, and in 48 hours killed 100,000 people. Yeah. So, what is that evil? Well, they estimated that if we would have went toe to toe with Japan without the bombs, without all the bombing that we did, we would have lost anywhere from 1 to 2 million soldiers. So, which is better? Which is better? Is doing the thing to win this war? Is that evil? Like, no. Again, war sucks, guys. War is literally you trying to murder other people until you crush their will, and so that they capitulate and surrender. That's the goal, right? That has to be that way. You have to prosecute wars that way, because if you do it any other way, you're going to get what we got in 20 years of GWAT. You're going to get what Israel got in 2 years of prosecuting the Gaza war. So it's important to understand all that.
Yeah, we've lost the ability to understand how war is supposed to be fought, and that's why, like, imagine a world war. What did it last, like 5-7 years? I forgot what World War II was. Wasn't that long. Point being, and that's because we killed the shit out of people. We killed them until, that's what we did, until they quit. Like, now we have these protracted wars, whether you're looking at every time that we started moving away from that. You look at Vietnam, then you look at the global war on terror, and just move further and further. Like, we started this mixing humanitarian efforts with war, and you just can't do that. And it's the least humanitarian way to fight a war for people on both sides. More people end up dying, more people end up suffering. You end up with a country that has been in rubble for 20 years, just like we see in Afghanistan and Iraq. I mean, it's, of course, we had a lot of people that were very eager to extend that war so they can spend a lot of money over there and get a lot of money out of the United States. That's really what that was, a big cash cow. Yeah, man, some of these things are, like you said, they're complex, they're nuanced, and there's no good answer to a lot of these things. And then what I'm just so sick of seeing, and it started off with the left and now it's extended to the right, is like the moment that you disagree with somebody else, you paint them as evil, as, some mouthpiece for Israel or a mouthpiece for whatever else. Like, we have propaganda going on in this country all the time, and misinformation going on all the time. And it doesn't just come from one direction. And I think that's the other thing that people have to realize. Yeah, like, Israel spends a lot of money in the United States through many different ventures, basically doing public relations in the United States to try to enhance their image here in the United States. That's true. And it's because they rely on us, without a doubt. They rely on us for a lot of things, financially, militarily. I think some of them, we have obviously a lot of people that have ties back to Israel. You can say that's good or bad, but that's true with any country. But then we also have an anti-Israel propaganda that's constantly going on as well, that I think people are just completely blind to. Like, we have people, and by the way, I believe a lot of that is coming from actors that hate the United States even worse and are a bigger threat to the United States. And I think we need to be aware that we're constantly propagandized by competing interests. And you got to sit back and have a little bit of cogsec and actually think about, hey, what is the motives behind these things, and is this true? And then research that stuff for yourself, because just like you said, most of what people know are based on slogans, and like the most compelling slogan wins the debate, because people look at a headline and then they just take it as fact. Like, we have to be critical, and we have to be suspicious of every piece of information, and you need to go find it out for yourself, or you're going to be tricked. And most people on both sides of that argument, there's some people that are pro-Israel that are just completely brainwashed. There are definitely people that are anti-Israel. I don't even know what you put on this side. Anti-Israel that are completely brainwashed. And either way, what happens is American interests get lost in all of it. And that's what we need to pay the most attention to.
Right. And that's a big, like, I would love to, I don't necessarily want to talk about Israel all the time. Like, I'd much rather talk about the problems that are really affecting Americans today and go through it. But the propaganda pushes are so big and so broad right now that I feel like I have to kind of push back against it. So just so that, if I can change one person's mind and be like, hey, let's just think about this for a second. Like, why is this being pushed? One, if you take away our alliance with NATO, and if you take away our alliance with Israel, and you take away our alliance with Australia, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. So that's those alliances right there, what really make up the world from a strategic standpoint. So everything is policed, and everything is kind of like, you want to call it the everyday norm because of those alliances that we have. So no, China's not getting too frisky, because we have a little bit of alliance with India, but if they try to do anything with Taiwan, they know that we're going to come in, especially under Trump. Maybe if another president's there, we'll see. But and at the same time, people don't realize, like Japan and Australia, if they went into Taiwan, those two countries would be, 100% against that move from China as well. And because that's Chinese expansion, farther into South China Sea. And now, that threatens not only their maritime trade routes, that threatens their ability to keep their supply chains rolling, and ultimately their ability to survive. So you have to look at the world in this kind of, from a strategic standpoint, and from the levels of warfare, tactical, operational, and strategic. And you have to look at it from strategic. If you look at it any other way, if you zoom in too much, then you're going to miss a lot of things. You're not going to realize like what the whole point of this is. Like if the Ottoman Empire ever wants to return, guess what? Israel can't be allied with the United States. They have to end that alliance. If Russia ever wants to regain its territory and kind of actually feel like it's won a war recently, NATO has to go away. So, all these pushes that we're seeing, this propaganda that we're seeing, it all has a purpose behind it. And I've talked about it before. It's not necessarily that each of these countries is working together and I'm sure they are working together somewhat, but they have their own operations. They have their own campaign plans that they're doing. And this is all, this is 100% campaign plans that they're doing against us, and information operations is just one little small part of that. But think of it as like, if you're at a poker table and you're sitting there with two, three, four other dudes that are kind of, you're not playing together, you're not cheating, you're not sharing all the information like, oh, I got this card. But if one of the dudes that you're with at the table starts betting, you bow out unless you have the nuts, right? Then you could take over betting, and then they'll all bow out because they're not fighting against you. They're going to let you take those battles now against everybody else at the table. This is the same concept. They're all pushing all these different operations at us, and they're not necessarily all coordinated, but they all have the same goal, which is to demoralize our population, which is to create chaos and confusion, and ultimately to make people just exhausted and overwhelmed that they even have to deal with all this stuff, and it just creates this exhaustion, because like you said, even people that don't care about Israel at all, it doesn't affect their day, they've heard about it now so much that they're like, you know what, just screw Israel, I'm overhearing about it. And so they're winning just because of those little things right there.
What do you think is the main push behind us not being able to have reasonable discussions in the United States, even about foreign policy, for or against Israel or anything else, without someone immediately claiming that, you're some sort of foreign asset?
I think it's just, that's the way politics has evolved in the United States now. It's always got to be a gotcha. It's always got to be a talking point. And we can't sit down and actually work with the other side. And I'm trying to move away from the left versus right dichotomy that's been kind of crafted for us, because it's just not really accurate. The more accurate way to look at it is collectivists versus individual rights, people who elevate individual rights versus people who elevate the collective. Yeah. And so when you look at it that way, now there's no confusion about like what Nick Fuentes and his push is. Like they're calling themselves like the super right wing or nationalists, and it's kind of like a nationalist socialist movement, which, hey, we've seen one of those before in history, haven't we? But if you take away the right and left, you realize that what Nick Fuentes really is pushing for is a Christian ethno state in America, right? To do away with the Constitution, because that's the First Amendment's gone. He wants a Christian ethno state, which is elevating one collective, which would be white Christian nationalists. Okay, so that's a collectivist ideology now that he is pushing. You can sit here and say, oh, he's right wing because he's nationalist, but now we're going to get confused in nuance. We're going to get bogged down in this nuance and these arguments about this, instead of actually talking about what matters. And what matters is that he's talking about trying to get a Christian ethno state, the United States be morphed into a Christian ethno state, which is, again, against everything that we stand for. And I understand that the United States was a nation that was founded by Christians. And it's important that we understand that, but we also have to understand that they made it not a Christian nation on purpose, because the First Amendment is so important in your freedom of religion. The state can never tell you what you should or should not believe. Yeah. So So yeah, so when
That
we
was-
look at
that would require some nuance, and it seems like the United States population is less and less capable of
yeah,
engaging in that for sure.
yeah, that I mean that's it's laziness, it's ignorance about history, and it's all these things kind of coupled together that have made people formulate all these opinions, and they formulate these very, very strong opinions about these things that they really know nothing about. So a lot of people have very strong opinions about the war in Gaza, and they know absolutely nothing about it other than what they saw on TikTok or on X by some influencer or some podcaster that also knows nothing about it, So like,
Yeah.
maybe let's start listening to people like Ian Carroll was a pizza delivery guy 2 years ago, and now he has 1.3 million followers. Like, is that weird? Is he like, how is that elevated? And then, how do you get that following? And then how can you like go through his stuff, and like, it's all conjecture. It's all, all these different, it's looking at history the wrong way. It's not understanding, the nuances, or even just the apologetics of the time, right? So being able to go back and look at what was written at a time, you can't always just read something from the past and completely understand it in modern day times, because things have changed, right? So you have to kind of also look at it, how it was written at the time and by who and under what context. And that's another thing that is really hard to get people to understand, is that they'll pull like it's just the same thing. They'll pull a quote from the Bible. They'll pull a quote from here, and they'll say, well, this one verse says this, and they'll pull it out of context. And then other people will just be like, oh, well, it says that, so this must be true, but it's completely out of context. You didn't put the surrounding verses with it that actually let you know what we were talking about here. And now you've morphed it into this other thing. And so
I even hate, going back to that, I even hate the kind of the hindsight of 2020, even going back to like, World War II. Now there's this big push to kind of like, oh God, we use the atomic bombs. Like, and now we're like condemning the United States for doing so. All right. And but like you said, putting things in context, like was firebombing all of Tokyo and many other of the major cities, was that okay? No, the fact is like China, what Japan was doing in China and in Korea was some of the most horrific shit that you've ever seen in your life. And
ruthless.
Again, they were absolutely, like, we don't even understand how radical Japan actually was. Like, there was some guy like 17 years later, after the war was over, he's still like on a remote island still fighting the war. Like, how radical the entire Japanese population was and how far they were going to take this war, I don't think we can quite grasp. It's comparing them to like Al Qaeda or some of these other radicalized groups that we have today. It doesn't even compare. It doesn't even come close. And so when we're always reinterpreting history and trying to project our own thoughts, feelings, and our newfound morals upon the past, like it falls so short. It's so silly. It's so short-sighted, and most of the time it's wrong. It's just factually wrong as well.
It is, and that's it just goes back to the lack of understanding history and how, like, the Japanese Empire at the time, and how they were imperialistic and expansive, and then just, I mean, you don't even looking at how Chiang Kai-shek in China was as he was, when Mao was having his revolutionary push, and then how that was all linked in with Russia, and then you're getting this false. They're vilifying Jewish people, and they're saying like the Bolsheviks were Jewish. So there's like 5% of the Bolsheviks were Jewish, and so they're pulling all these sources that aren't accurate or real, and then they're using that to vilify the entire ethnicity of Jewish people. Which, again, and so you could say like Karl Marx's mom was Jewish. Well, okay, but before he was born, his dad converted to Lutheranism, and then he was raised in a secular home. They weren't like super practicing Lutherans.
Hold on. I don't even understand that logic. So does that make Karl Marx's mom a Marxist? Like,
yes, that's what I'm saying, is they formulate their argument. They're like, well, Yeah, they're like, he was a Jew, so he was bad. And I'm like, dude, guess what? There's been evil Christians that have done evil things. There's been evil every demographic of anything you want to pull up in history. Like, somebody was evil in that group, and you can't vilify the entire group for it. So it's kind of one of those things. You got, like, it's exhausting, because we're sitting here having to, teach history that people should have learned, when they were much younger. But it's just not something that's important to people anymore. I mean, you've seen I'm sure you've seen the videos on Instagram or whatever of guys asking, basic questions about American history to Americans that are, young Americans, and them knowing absolutely nothing about it. They have no clue. They have no clue. They don't know who the founding fathers were. They don't know, it's just like all these things that people don't know about. And like, how do you make that important? How do you get that information to this younger demographic? And Charlie Kirk was really, really good at it. So, that was a huge loss for us. And I'm a pretty avid believer that all the stuff we're seeing right now, I mean, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but it all started really getting pushed hard right after he was killed.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And that's another thing for me too, that kind of tells me, like, again, I'm not saying that this is some conspiracy. I don't know that. I think it's more opportunistic. I think it's more, they saw now the main conservative voice, the main conservative Christian voice from the Republican side is no longer here, and he's not here to push back against any of this infighting now that's about to happen. And so then it just kind of erupted.
Well, look, I plan on shooting a video tomorrow. I'll talk about this very thing. Like you said, I don't know if this was pre-planned or whatever else. That would be complete speculation. And obviously, even my opinions on this, what's going on, somewhat is speculation. But I think there's a lot of at a minimum, circumstantial evidence to point to a couple things. Number one, I wish people would realize that the deep state didn't go away because Donald Trump won this last election. They didn't go away. And in his first administration, what they tried to use was the deep state to, essentially, number one, they were bureaucratically handicapping him constantly, which they're still doing. And then the other thing that they were doing, they were using lawfare against him to thwart his presidency and undermine his popularity. And then, they were given a gift of COVID, and I think they stole the election. Well, the deep state didn't go away, but what they found was that those methods weren't going to work against Donald Trump. So what we have now, I think we have an information push. The number one thing one of the main forces that got Donald Trump elected was TPUSA. Like, no one can deny that. And what's happening is, I do think there are political forces that are intentionally twisting everything that's going around with the Charlie Kirk situation to damage TPUSA, to make sure that they are less effective at getting Donald Trump. Oh, well, obviously not Donald Trump, but J.D. Vance. It's going to be J.D. Vance is going to be the next candidate for the Republican Party. So it's either, hey, you know what? Hey, let's use this to destroy the main thing, that the largest force on the political right, to undermine him, to say that he killed them with no evidence whatsoever. But because of this weird, fun murder mystery thing with no evidence, we're tying all these people from TPUSA into this. And it takes wild speculation to even get there to begin with. Like, you have to make up this conspiracy, and then to support that conspiracy, you have to come up with crazy conjecture and even more fantastical leaps to turn it into something that killed Charlie Kirk. And that's what's going on with this. And I wish people would wake up and see that, like, undermining TPUSA, the most powerful political force in the United States for the conservative right, is almost, at least will decrease the chances that we have a political successor that is effective. Right. It's going to be J.D. Vance. I don't know who they're going to come up with on the left. I mean, we see Gavin Newsom, but I'll tell you what, I'll take J.D. Vance over Gavin Newsom. And I think we need to understand what people are unwittingly being roped into and why TPUSA is actually being targeted. They're not being targeted because anyone really believes that they were involved in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. That makes no sense. All you got to use is some common sense, folks. Charlie Kirk was TPUSA. Charlie Kirk Like nobody within that organization is going to be like, hey, you know what? We got our cash cow here. No one has, they understood intimately that no one had the voice that Charlie Kirk had. And for people to turn this into a political bludgeon, we're shooting ourselves in the foot, and you're fallen victim of just information operations, and you're buying into propaganda because it's fun, exciting, and there's other motives. I won't just completely. There's people out there, the good-hearted people that believe some stuff. I'll give it to you. Then there's definitely the grifters, but I do think that there is a much darker political force that is using this to thwart the chances of us having a J.D. Vance and a conservative government come the next election.
Absolutely. And so again, you can go down the conspiracy rabbit holes all you want. I don't think this was some massive conspiracy. I think this was what we saw was the effect of their messaging over the last 25 years. The different push that side has used so far to just confuse, demoralize, and really just vilify, especially, I mean, really the last 15 years has been pretty bad. It was kind of really under Obama is when it really started with the BLM movements and all that. And so what I think what happened is exactly what has been reported to us by the FBI so far. I'm sure, obviously, they're going to leave some stuff out. They're conducting an investigation, right? And am I happy with the way the FBI has handled everything in the recent times? Like, no, I'm not. Absolutely not. But at the same time, we do have to understand that there's a certain way these things go down, and we're not going to know all of the information right now. And hopefully we will. Hopefully it'll go to court, and we'll know all the information at some point once it's released. But the effectiveness, like you said, TP USA is massive. People don't even realize. I mean, before Charlie was killed, there were 850 college chapters, 1,200 high schools around the nation, 3,500 campuses total. So very massive, a very effective organization. The amount that they swayed the 18 to 24-year-old demographic towards Republicans was the biggest threat to Democrats in the last 20 years. And so I think it's just opportunism. I think it's when he was killed, this now they can start pushing these things that they really want to push. And again, it's kind of like, it's like a fire hose effect. Like, let's just push every crazy thing possible to overwhelm everybody, so no one knows what the truth is. That's an old Russian tactic. If you go back to look at active measures and how they approach propaganda, that is their MO down to a T. It's to demoralizing the population and creating chaos and division is more effective as from a propaganda standpoint than any other form of propaganda. So that's what.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll finish after.
Look, if I was to put my conspiratorial tinfoil hat on, I would say that this is something, if we're going to talk about conspiracies, when we talk about the deep state, when we talk about political actors, foreign adversaries, and everything else, one of the things I would like to see really investigated, and this goes with Thomas Crooks as well, by the way, I do think that something is very possible, and I talked about this before, that there could have been a effort to radicalize someone like Tyler Robinson, like Thomas Crooks, through a whole bunch of different psychological manipulation that I think is very real, very possible through online media. And there could have been a conspiracy to set some of these things in motion. And every bit of this could possibly be planned. And I think it's very suspicious when we see so little from Thomas Crooks on the social media side, where we see points, even what's coming out as of late, where there's suddenly he goes dark before he goes operational, essentially. I think all those things are very possible, and it's something that we're not seeing explored. And the idea, and here's another issue that I have with this. There seems to be, you talk about cover up, from certain aspects of this, is like they completely reject the idea that it's even possible with all the mountains of evidence that we have. It's still completely impossible that Tyler Robinson was the shooter. And I think that's intentional. I think that's somebody covering their tracks, pushing out that narrative. Like, there has been so many lies that have been pushed about that portion alone. like turning him into the victim. Like, folks, again, charging documents. His parents turned him in. And if they didn't, if that's not true, then we're going to find that out in court. Even people saying, oh, no, that wasn't him limping with a gun down his pants. He's actually handicapped. Like, all of these weird excuses, twisting themselves into pretzels, trying to say that, hey, Tyler Robinson wasn't the shooter, that he wasn't even on UVU campus. Then what was he doing 3.5 hours away from his house? Well, why was he there? Like, we throw out this nonsense, and then you don't even make it make sense. It ends up being this incoherent, propagandized nonsense that, like, you can't even make it make sense. And I don't understand that.
Again, people love conspiracy theories. They love to like be in on something that they feel like no one else knows, and so they're in on the groundbreaking news that this is happening, and we're on the inside of it, and it makes them feel good about it. But the reality of the situation is that, a lot of the times, and I've called out weird things before. I did a full breakdown of the Vegas shooting, and there's some really glaring inconsistencies there. And there's a lot of things you can look at. But I did a full breakdown of the Butler shooting. And there's a lot of things you can, we're at the end of that breakdown. It's either such gross negligence to the point of criminal negligence by the Secret Service and any other in local law enforcement involved, or they let this child move around and have a ladder and get to the top of the only building with perfect line of sight of the, from a threat and vulnerability assessment standpoint, that was the building that I would have locked down no matter what. Just the thought process behind how he was able to get up there, and then he was able to engage 8 shots, and so it's total 16 seconds before he was re-engaged by counter snipers. Like that too, that's very glaring to me. So, I think there is just so many wazoo theories that people want to throw out, and then they kind of tie them in with some of these other like weird things that we're seeing and we're questioning. And then it just makes it this whole, everything's a conspiracy. Everything that's happening around us is completely op, and we're all being played every single day. And now a lot of stuff is an op. I will say, the propaganda being pushed right now is the biggest I've ever seen. And I think AI is helping with that. I think the ability to create, massive amounts of bot farms that can make you feel, that'll make people feel, and they do it to me. If anything that I post, it could be, this is, if it has the word Israel in it at all, I'm going to get, 50 or 100 people that have 5 to 7 followers and just have, just started their accounts a month or two ago, telling me that I'm, the worst thing ever, blah, 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 blah. All the tropes that you hear every day. And a lot of that is bots. A lot of those are bots, and then some of them are just, and then it mixes in well with all the people, the real people that are just have fallen for this narrative. And it's very effective. And if like some words on the internet aren't going to bother me, like you're not going to make me mad, dude, for telling me that Israel must be paying me or like whatever. Like, I don't have as much, combat experience as a lot of Green Berets, especially a lot of the GWAT guys. They have like way more time in that. This is kind of my expertise. The last job that I did in the Army, the theater level planning course that I ran, that was where I was like, this is my element. This is my thing that I'm actually really, really good at this stuff. And so it's just one of those things, like, how do we combat it? We have to proactively talk and get on here and highlight what is true and what is real and what is verifiable, and bring reason back into the conversation, and we are going to have to confront and talk to some of these people that are pushing these narratives, if only to just show that they are pushing a narrative. Because if you or I got on live with some of these people that are pushing all this stuff, they wouldn't let us talk. Like if we were to go interview Candace Owens, you've seen her in combative interviews. Even if we are completely calm and we're going to let her talk and then we would try to talk, she's going to overtalk us to stop us from talking, because at the end of the day, we would be able to highlight what is real and what is verifiable. And she cannot highlight that because her entire show is now based on just theories and wild theories, and she calls them like she has evidence, but then rarely do you ever see anything that backs any of it up. So,
and
that's
unverified sources, my sources say.
Yeah.
One of the things you were talking about, though, look, I'll tell you the other op that's happening that I think is a very clear op that people need to be aware of, that is going against the interest of the United States, and that is Google. I'm telling you, Google, YouTube, they control every bit of information. They control the narrative. They control the optics. You're seeing from them and I do not think they are a company that ABC, right? I do not think that they are a company, or Alphabet. I don't think they're a company that actually is for the American people. And I think we need to be very aware of that. And I think that's where a lot of the stuff comes. They control what gets seen on YouTube. They control what gets suppressed on YouTube. I think you need to be vividly aware of those things and understand that when you Google something, don't just look at the first thing that you see. Like, go through there. I recommend not using Google. I use it, but I also use other browsers as well. We just need to understand that. And I think that's one of the biggest sources of propaganda. That is one of the biggest things that engineers what we believe. And they're not our friends. They're not our friends. And I don't think they're friends of America either. I don't think they believe in the Constitution. Look at the things that they do on social media. They will push all kinds of anti-American rhetoric. They will push they'll push LGBTQ stuff. They'll push trans stuff. My God, you get on there and talk about the Second Amendment, you're crushed constantly. It's just, you can look how almost all of their censorship goes in one direction. There's a reason for that. Luckily, there's been this surge of voices because we understand the operational environment finally. I think more and more people, which is another reason why I think more, especially people in special operations, more veterans need to get involved, because they have a little bit more insight into how information operations actually work. And not to say there's people out there that are civilians that don't have some insight and don't understand these things, but fact is, I think we need more veteran voices out there. So, continue doing what you're doing. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, same with you, and getting people on and having conversations too. And that's, I'm going to start doing a lot more videos. And one of the things I want to do is kind of the attention span of a lot of people. I'll do a lot of write-ups and I do a lot of things, but a lot of people that are reading those probably already agree with me. There's probably very few people that are, reading those and they're like, oh, this just changed my whole mind. Just because, how often do you jump into something that you disagree with and then want to read the whole thing on it just to see if you really do disagree with it? That's just not a thing that most people are going to do.
People are resistant to anything that may crush their paradigm. And I don't care. Exactly. I don't care if it's just hearing another theory. That's one of the things that I've done that I haven't seen anybody else in this discussion do. I've invited multiple people. And by the way, anybody, I don't care who you are, what you believe, if you can put together a good presentation, an argument, and you're willing to discuss it civilly, whether we're talking about politics, whether we're talking about Charlie Kirk, you're welcome on my show. Let's challenge each other's ideas. And if you really believe in your ideas, number one, you want them challenged, you want them tested, and you almost I work on trying to disprove my own ideas. And that's what you got to do, or you're going to be tricked. If you just resist, you put yourself in this echo chamber and all the other people around you're like, oh, you're perfect. Like put yourself in front of some resistance. That's what you got to do.
Yeah. And I think that part of that is just a kind of a unique way that Green Berets just are. And especially when you're in a team room environment, or, when you're coming through the Q course, it's one of those things like you're going to get told if you're messing up. and it's going to be, they're going to tell you dispassionately, they're going to tell you that you need to fix yourself or you're not going to be here any longer. And so then that kind of creates this mindset that we approach life with from that point on, like, hey,
about that. You're right, though.
You know, yeah. And so you know, sharing that is important, but you're right. I mean, the people don't like to feel like they were duped, and then if they are duped, they don't like to admit that they were, you know. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's like, oh, you know, I'm mad at you because you made me feel foolish, and you made me feel like that I wasn't smart enough to understand this stuff, and now, you know, I was wrong. But they're not going to admit that. So then, you know, the usual answer is to double down and kind of just keep pushing the same narrative,
and then to attack you personally. Undermine any valid points you have with, you know, ad hominems. You're with Israel, you're a Fed. I mean, those are the favorite. I mean, what it used to be is you're a racist, you're a Nazi.
Yep.
And now that ad hominem attack tactic, which is the tactic of cowards, by the way, is what has morphed over into the right now when we have disagreements with everything. And it's dumb. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Like, if you disagree with somebody on Israel and you're an American, like, get on there and have some counter arguments. Stay away from the personal attacks. Stay away from name calling. You're debasing your own credibility. And again, like, I welcome that, because like you said, that, you know, one of the things you're saying, I always sit around in different professional environments that I've been in since I got out of the military. And I'm like, why can no one stand criticism? Like, I want critical feedback. I want to know when I'm effing up, because that's the other thing too, is like, sometimes I find in like the civilian professional environment, people won't tell you you're messing up. What they'll do is, like, they'll go whisper behind your back and go on this whisper campaign and try to go tell your boss what a jerk you are and how you're just a POS, as opposed to, like, coming to you and saying, hey, like, this is what you're doing wrong, and I'd like you to get it fixed, and here's how you do to fix it. And even like managers and, you know, your supervisors, they're afraid to come tell anybody anything. And I understand that also in that environment, like, people don't take criticism well, but, you know, but basically what ends up happening, instead of fixing you, they figure out another reason to fire you, as opposed to actually developing you as an employee, as trying to create a team environment. And like, hey, let's bring it in, folks. You know, Gary, you're screwed up today. And by the way, this is what you keep screwing up. I don't like it. I don't like what you're saying, or I don't know, you're not showing up on whatever it is. Instead of fixing you, they're just going to talk to other people about what a bad person you are, and then ultimately get everyone against you, and then find a reason to fire you that isn't substantive to the reason that they actually don't like you. You know what I mean? It's weird.
Yeah. No, and that's a perfect example. And the other thing too that people need to learn is what fallacious arguments are, and what they and how to recognize them and know when they're being used against you. So you know, ad hominem is the big one. That's what they're always going to go to. They're going to attack the person that is giving the message that they disagree with. So instead of focusing on, let's talk on that, they're going to just call you a name and call you a shill or call you this or that, so that they don't have to approach the argument. So there's that one, the straw man argument, and the red herrings are the three big ones that are constantly used. So straw man is just misrepresenting someone's argument to attack a weaker version of it. And then a red herring is introducing a completely irrelevant topic or a distraction into that. So just people, when you're in an engagement with somebody and they're telling you something, or you're going back and forth about something, just understand that when any of those three things happens, you've won the argument at that point. And because they can no longer in good faith argue against your topic. And so now they're going to use these other methods to try and win this argument. So understanding those, that's another thing I try to push out, is when I see it, you know, when I see these different things, I try to like quote or something and be like, hey, you know, this is 100% a straw man. Look what they're doing here. You know, this is a red herring. This is what they're doing here. This is a hasty generalization. You know, Karl Marx was a Jew, technically, by, you know, ethnic Jew. So all Jews are bad because Karl Marx was evil. So that's a hasty generalization, right? So just stuff like that, and kind of understanding how they're going to argue against you we'll definitely help you get away. And then you can call them out for it and say, no, we're not going to do that. You're misrepresenting what I just said, or you're changing the argument now, or you're moving the goalposts. We're going to go back and I want you to answer this question. And then the other thing that we can do is we can just ask questions, because a lot of times you can just by asking the appropriate questions at the appropriate time, you can get their own logic spun to a point where they're like, so having the ability to stay calm is pretty important when you're in a discussion with these people. And I'm getting better at it. I still, like, sometimes people are so stupid that I'm just like, all right, you're an idiot, I can't talk to you anymore. But but there, I think it's important to highlight this stuff. And so I'll use, they'll be like, this dude's just a troll. There's no reason, he's not gonna change his mind no matter what you say to him, so you might as well not even try. Well, I'm like, I'm not doing it for him, guys. I'm posting, this response publicly to what he was saying so that other people can learn from it, and they can see that this is the way, that you can attack these types of these fallacious arguments and these different things that we're seeing today. So I think that's important as well.
Yeah. And, for those people out there that are big Charlie Kirk fans, if somebody's saying something incorrect, do you think that Charlie, or that you feel is incorrect, do you think that Charlie would just respond with, he's a Fed, he's paid by Israel? No, like, get in there and dig into those arguments, like dig into provide a substantive argument and cover down on the facts. I think a lot of people, so many people pushing some of these things with Charlie Kirk. Number one, I know most of them didn't even know who Charlie Kirk was till September 10th. And most of them don't agree with anything with TPUSA, which is why they have no problem. They're ideologues, right? They're political ideologues that were ideologically opposed to Charlie Kirk to begin with, and opposed to what TPUSA stands for. And I think you need to understand that you're being captured by some of these people. Mm-hmm. And again, going back to what you're saying, like, when we're propagandized at the level that we are, always exposed to information operations, like, the thing that you have to do is you got to fall back on researching and not just go for one headline. Like, do some research on a topic that's important to you. If you really want to support it, or you really think you're against it, research that topic and try to prove yourself wrong. Number two, you got to go with facts and evidence. And if you don't, then you're just believing in something that's fictional to begin with. And there's no way to support it other than an ad hominem attack, because when someone does come at you with a substantive intellectual argument, you got no solid ground to stand on. And that's the problem.
Yep. One of the things we definitely should talk about too is this kind of push that we just saw, these videos of these congressmen, senators that are saying, you should not listen to unlawful orders. They're not highlighting what orders were unlawful, right? They're doing it on purpose. They're leaving it vague, and they're kind of they're barely towing the line of a few different crimes without actually giving you a way that you could really prosecute it, because they understand messaging, they understand what they're doing. And these are the same people. I made a post the other day, right after I think it was Schlotkin, her it was the video she posted where it went through all these different senators and Congress, members of Congress that were talking about that you should, you can't or they'll back you up if you refuse an unlawful order and blah blah blah. And again, like, what order was unlawful? And then I tried to make the point to them that, that you guys you're gonna push this stuff, but you were also the same people that were using our active duty service members as tools to get what you wanted out of the shutdown that you engineered. So,
they didn't think it was an unlawful order to be forced for service people to get a experimental vaccine.
Mm-hmm. They get kicked out if they didn't.
All about same people. Mm-hmm. We're all about you getting removed from the military if you protested that at all.
Yep. And so it's kind of, it's one of those things that we definitely need to highlight like what they're doing and how they're messaging this, because it's clever and it's gonna get them some wins out of it. But people need to understand these they're going to use our service members as tools as much as they can, without caring about their well-being, without caring about, like, again, they were perfectly fine not voting on a single issue continuing resolution to ensure that our active duty military was paid during the shutdown.
Yeah.
That they wanted, because, and the reason they wouldn't capitulate on that until just now, till like last week, was because they wanted to use our veteran or our active duty military as a tool to negotiate and to bargain with. So.
No, I agree. And the fact is when some jackass actually does refuse a lawful order and they end up under court martial and they end up getting kicked out, they're not going to be there. They're going to leave you out there to dry. And quite frankly, they have no power to do anything either. What are they going to do? Show up and
they're like, we got your back.
Yeah. How do you got our back? What are you going to do? You're going to, like, forget about that. And what that does is it undermines the core tenets of our military. And it undermines, it already is planting a seed to people out there that are in our military right now. It's like, oh, I can just decide arbitrarily that I don't like this, that I don't think this is a constitutional order. Like, that's not how this works. Like, there's a process that you have to go through. You can't just say, I'm not going to do this. Right. You know, you don't get to Iraq or Afghanistan in the middle of Fallujah, say, you know what, I'm a conscientious objector. I'm going to quit fighting and walk out of there. It's not how this stuff works. So, no, I think we have so many. Look, if you step back and you look at what's going on, I think there are so many people in power that do have the objective of undermining the power of this country. I think there are so many people that have been brainwashed into the idea that America is fundamentally evil, that everything that we're living on stolen land. We were founded by slave owners. Everything about America is evil. And guess what? They end up in Congress or they end up as the mayor of New York. And under the guise of something else completely, they're going to continue to work to destroy this country. We've had a lot of people in power have been doing that for over 50 years or longer. And then, of course, we just have greedy people that are exploiting the American people as well. There's part of that. So we have a lot of complex problems. And in my opinion, being completely indifferent to Israel, to be honest with you, Israel isn't our main one. Jews aren't our main one either. The argument's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, we kind of talked about the problems, right? And they're pretty simple ones. Like, let's just stop dual citizenship if you're going to have a security clearance or be in a, prominent part of our government. And we can talk about how to end foreign lobbying, and how, but then this becomes a very difficult conversation to have if you really want to talk about it, because lobbying isn't a part of our Constitution, right? There's nothing that really guarantees the right to lobby. That's not a thing that exists. But what does exist is the First Amendment. Right. And so the government can't tell you that you can't talk to somebody or a representative or whatever. So lobbying has it's evolved into something that I don't think was ever intended by the founding fathers. But at the same time, how do you really combat that without infringing on people's rights? So, that's where it kind of gets.
Well, it gets weird too, because people want to talk about AIPAC, but AIPAC is actually is U.S. citizens that believe in Israeli interests, and you can condemn that if you want, but that is their right to contribute to AIPAC. Now, I don't care what lobby it is, because there's a lot of other lobbies out there that are lobbying essentially for other countries, right? Like, there are Americans that create this lobby group that believe that we should have more interest or putting more things, laws, programs toward Canada or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we should have strict rules for that. We should pay attention to that. We need to constantly have good intelligence monitoring that so that it's not corrupted. And I know people are, and probably rightfully, like, hey, this stuff is being abused. I'm fine with that. But understand there are other lobbyists and lobby groups that I think are doing far more damage. And whether we're talking about like the pharmaceutical lobby, like everything that we have, the amount of laws in place that protect pharmaceutical companies and are forcing more and more experimental, untested, unverified injections into our kids and into us, like trillions of dollars of money. Like there's a reason why we have the most expensive healthcare system in the world and one of the least healthy populations. And it's not because we don't have enough vaccines. But yet, like to put my kid in school, he's got to have 47 vaccines that, 30 of them I didn't even have to have 20 years ago. And I feel like I'm doing okay. I don't know, man. It's nuts. It's nuts when you try to put some of this stuff in perspective. And if you try to put it in perspective, you're attacked as a foreign adversary. It's freaking insane.
Yeah. And I mean that we definitely need to push that focus here, because you're absolutely right. There are lobbies that are far even more detrimental than foreign lobbies. Some of the pharmaceutical lobby, which is massive. And we've created a system now in America where we have a highly regulated medical system and we're also highly subsidizing it. And we're wondering why it's so expensive and so impossible for anyone to deal with. And what another thing people don't know is insurance, health insurance rates are about to go up 30-40% here in the next month or so. And that's what everyone in the industry is talking about. That's not just me making that up. That, if you go ask anyone that, the people that are selling health insurance right now, and they're already talking about the changes that are about to happen because we're in an unsustainable kind of cycle with it that if we don't fix, it's going to get worse and worse. And now, we're subsidizing healthy people, or healthy people are subsidizing unhealthy people in America right now. And there's far more unhealthy people, that are actually dragging the system down. And that now you're paying, your premiums that were, for a family of 4 that were $1,200, they're about to be, $1,600 to $1,800 a month. And like, how, at this point, we looked at it financially. We're about to have another baby, and once that baby's here, we're probably dropping all health insurance, and we're just going to pay cash for our checkups, because we're a healthy family, and if I had an option to get like a catastrophic coverage, I would do that, but I don't need, I'm paying anywhere from $90 to $100 per visit for like my kids' checkups, for anything that that's going on like there. I have the VA obviously, but like but I don't really use it for anything. So it's one of those, like, should I be paying $1,000 or more a month in the eventuality of something happening, and then I still have to meet this deductible? Or why don't I just take a portion of that, put it into a high interest savings, or put it into a CD, or whatever you want to do. There's all different kinds of ways to invest it. They have it all locked down where you can't do your own HSA unless you have an overarching insurance plan. And they do that on purpose so that you don't get the tax breaks without paying the insurance companies, which is pretty disgusting if you ask me about it. Because you should be able to open your own HSA account that is tax deductible based on your healthcare needs, right?
Oh, that's exactly where I'm at right now. So once we went full time with Paramount in 2023, and once I left my job, that's what we've done. We decided, number one, our family coverage plan was going to be, the last time we checked, was like $1,800 a month. I have VA coverage as well, but here's the thing, like, so I don't need health insurance, but we can't have a family health insurance where I insure my 2 kids and wife. Like, you can't do that. You have to be the primary, which is absolutely retarded. So that's what we've been doing for the last couple of years, is we pay cash with everything. And, we are healthy, but at the same time, there is an issue if, like, suddenly there's one of us are severely injured, or, we have some sort of catastrophic sickness come down, like, we're kind of screwed. And it's exactly what you're talking about, is we have more people taking from the system than are paying in, and it's so much cheaper. Like, look, I could decide to quit everything today, go on welfare tomorrow. We'd have free health care. We'd have food. We'd have free housing. And we would get comfortable in poverty, like so many people have. And now you're retired. Everything's paid for. You're never going to get super wealthy or anything like that. But guess what? All of your needs are essentially taken care of. And it doesn't make sense, man. It's destroying this country, and people have figured out they're gaming the system. And there's so many healthy people out there on disability. There's so many healthy people out there that aren't working that, again, they've gotten so used because we have pushed to make sure that people in poverty are more comfortable than the people that are working 100-hour weeks trying to, make something of their lives and provide for their family. And the working class is getting crushed.
Yep. I mean, that's exactly right. That's what it comes down to is the middle class and the shrinking of the middle class since COVID too is another like really big thing that is affecting a lot of Americans. And it's how do you fix that? I mean, we have to be able to get into we have to have people go into Congress. We have to have people that are going to, these elected positions and actually stand up and say, like, we have to have conversations about this. We have to do something to make this better and to make America better for Americans. And instead of just bickering and calling each other names and saying like, you're this and you're that. And there are a few people that are doing that in Congress or trying to do that, but it just, our politics have just devolved to just such a gotcha, it's one gotcha after another, that it makes it really hard. And it is discouraging to, those of us that kind of understand what needs to happen. But then looking at it, like how impossible it seems for us to even get to that point, because we've essentially dug ourselves into this hole that's so deep and so full of muck and mire that we can't really climb ourselves out of it now without some serious pain. And so that's the other thing that we're gonna have to like realistically talk about is like, yes, we are a welfare state in America today. We're one of the biggest welfare. Actually, we may be the biggest. If you go by straight numbers, we're the biggest, biggest welfare state in the nation. And so we have to come to terms with that, and we have to know that yes, if we want to take steps to actually balance the budget, we want to take steps to actually do this. Like, there's going to be some pain involved in this process, because it's just like anything else. Once you get past the point of it being able to self-correct, now it's painful to correct. And so, just saw JD Vance and Tulsi. I love Tulsi as a person. She's I don't agree with her on everything socially and some of the other things that
I agree.
Some of her other platforms she has, but she really is a great American. She loves our service members. She loves giving back, and she just really is. She's trying to do good despite all the vilifications. And why do you think they tried to say she was a Russian asset and all this stuff? The same old little tropes. That's because they know that she was a dangerous Democrat to them at the time, because she was more just a left-leaning centrist. She's not going in with all the crazy stuff, and like I said, I don't have to agree with someone 100% to understand that, they are a net good for our country. So I wouldn't hate that. That running team right there, because I think it would balance each other out, and we could really start focusing on some things that really need to happen. But the presidency is important, but we've neglected Congress for so long now that that's the real problem. We're not legislating anymore. This is what has driven all these issues is we're relying on executive orders from whoever's in office at that time, and then the next person who comes in can just change all those executive orders, and now everything changes now. There's no laws in place, so it's all just kind of like, oh, I guess this is what we're going to do for the next 4 years, and then 4 years later or 8 years later, it's going to change again. We need Congress, and we need senators that are going to go in and genuinely go in with, America's interests and the American people's interests at heart above all else. And I have a hard time finding a lot that are doing that on a consistent basis. So,
well, I think one thing that could fundamentally change politics, it's never going to happen, is we've got to have congressional term limits. I think, these people get in there, and it's easy to fall into corruption and go with the flow and turn that into a cash cow, between the insider trading and all the other information that they have. And then the pressure of being demonized, like Tulsi went through, and most good politicians that are sincere, regardless of what side you're on, by the way, if you start bucking the system at all, you get reputationally destroyed. That's what they try to do, and they try to get you out of Congress because it's just all one big backroom deal. And man, if we don't have, when we've turned that into a profession, as opposed to like, hey, you go in there, you fight for people's rights, and then you got to go outside of that and you got to live with the decisions that you made in Congress. That's the problem. Is we've removed them from the consequences of their own policies that they're advocating for. And, as long as we have that, we have the elite ruling class, and then we have all of us peasants underneath. And that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many issues. I mean, the crony capitalism, right? Like that is existing today. These highly subsidized industries that basically the government has now said that they're unfailable. The banking industry, the automotive industry, we've seen these things, and no one really talks about them. Like these bailouts that we gave especially after the 2008 housing crisis, how that changed the landscape of how everything was going. And it really was one of those things. It's like no one was paying attention, and these companies started selling subprime mortgages, and doing all this stuff, and just basically creating a bubble that the only thing it could do at some point was burst. And when it burst, it was so big that it threatened the entire economy. So then now the government has to step in, and no one got in trouble for that. Some people lost money, some people made money, some people, the companies that probably should have lost all their money and shut down and, never been open again, they got saved by a government handout. So, this little backstop now that we have for these essential industries where these companies know that they're infallible and they can't, the government's going to bail them out no matter what. That's a huge problem.
I think that's why we saw it in 2008. We saw it, the biggest shift during COVID. Look, I think it's a strategy. I mean, it's clearly, if you don't see it, then you're blind. It's clearly a strategy to make everybody as dependent on government as possible. And because then you have no alternative. You have to rely on the government. You have to vote in people and policies just to make your life better. Because you can't like go out and work and like improve your situation. You have to wait for a politician and total reliance on government. So therefore you are now controlled by the government in every aspect. And I think that's intentional. I think, what we did during COVID and why they kept businesses closed for so long is they foresaw exactly what took place. We had people that were working, they got out of the workforce, and they never went back. They found out, what? I can live on like $2,000 a month or whatever they get from, the government, and I get free healthcare. Like, why go out and hustle and try to make a living when I can sit here on my couch and watch TV all day and make just enough to stay comfortable and compliant? And that's what they want. That's
Yep.
So,
that's the whole point of welfare from the get-go. I mean, if you go back to FDR and you look at, when all of this kind of really, really started, it was just kind of one of those things. It's like, hey, if we kind of subsidize these people's lives, we can ensure that we have continuous voting base.
Yep.
And that voting base is based on our ability to continue to give the handouts that they require to survive. So it's a self-licking ice cream cone now that, these people they don't have to worry about going out and getting a job and doing these things. Or if they do, they just have to go try to find a new job. They just have to reapply, and they just have to keep, putting a resume in, and then they can keep getting money, and it'll get them to the next thing, and so on and so forth. And it's just, it creates a culture of laziness, and it creates a culture of just willingness to not do anything. There's no ambition involved. It's just, I'm just going to survive here and be fine. And that's all I want out of life. And it's hard for me to understand that kind of mentality. But it's also a problem because, it's collectivism. It's not a full blown collectivist government at this point, but we have a lot of collectivism in the United States, at the federal and state levels. that are pushing us ever closer to moving into that territory where, now it's authoritarian because certain people are not ever going to want to give up what is theirs. Like the people that are actually working for their stuff, the people that are actually feeding Americans, the people that are actually doing the jobs that are required. Then what do we, how do we move on from there? So.
Yeah, no, it's a big problem. Lots of questions. I don't know. I don't know the answers. Folks, I think now's a good time to kind of open it up a little bit, and we'll take your questions. I've been posting some good comments that are relative. So if you have questions, make sure that you throw them up there, and we'll get them up there. So a couple of you guys were asking, did ComicTube strike again? Yes, they did. For whatever reason, our live stream last night was removed. I appealed that decision. We won the appeal. I think it's the first time I've ever had a video removed and actually won an appeal. Happens to me all the time. Even though it, like, nothing in it violates the community guidelines. Then I went to go post this live stream, and then I got, I'll just show you guys. It's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to go on here and show you guys. But let me share my screen real quick. This is what I've been getting all day. We'll share this. Then we'll go up here. We'll go up here and we'll hit create. Let's go live. Not so much. Live stream has been disabled. Please review YouTube's policies for information. Their policies are, if you're not a commie, we don't want you talking. That's what their policies are. So anyways, that's where we're at. I don't know what's going on with that. They granted our appeal, but I don't know. They haven't turned the lights back on live streaming. What I will do, folks, is I will take this entire podcast and I will post it as a video, provided I can do that. So we'll have the rest of this. And by the way, is obviously on Rumble and X. I don't know if you can go back and watch stuff on X. I don't know of an option to do that. Anyways,
Yeah, you can.
I'm sure you can. I'm not a very X literate. Jason Wilkins says the people who are begging for more government don't believe the government will ever come for them. They either don't know history or have intentionally ignored it. They believe life will be easier, never thinking they will be forced to work. I agree with that 100%.
Yep. I mean, collectivism is great for people that aren't going to push back against it. But you go look back at anything in history. The entire campaign by Stalin against what he called them the kulaks. So they always generate a name, whatever it is to basically these ideologies. They require an enemy. They require something that has to be crushed so that they can continuously crush things. So it's one of those things that feeds off of itself. And Stalin was very good at that. And they killed millions of people in Ukraine alone just by taking all of their grain, even their seed grain, and just letting them starve to death, so that if they refuse to collectivize their farms. So
yeah, I mean, look, it's an age-old tactic where they create a monster, a boogeyman, and then they're like, hey, I'm going to take care of that boogeyman, so put us in power. I promise you we'll take care of that. And that's exactly what we see done here in politics and even in political debates and even in the Charlie Kirk debate, unfortunately. Concon says tons of restaurants went under during COVID because the servers and kitchen staff wouldn't go back to work. Why kill myself working when I can get checks in the mailbox? That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
100%.
Yep. I'm a firm believer that COVID was a test. It was a test to see.
I agree.
Just how far they could push the population, how much are people going to dissent against certain things? Like it's something as stupid as a mask, right? Like I had big issues with that because especially I was in and out of Charlotte a lot during that time, and just the sheer idiocy of just why you're making me wear this cloth mask. You're making me wear it in the airplane, but I can take my mask off to eat and then I got to put it back on because science. It's just none of it made sense. And everybody knew it didn't make sense, and they still went along with it. It just blows my mind. I'm like, guys, what are we doing right now? Like, if they tell you when you walk into the restaurant that you have to have your mask on while you're walking, and then you can take it off when you sit down to eat, like, okay, like what? Like, why would I do that? Why would I do that?
What I thought was funny too is they exposed the brown shirts among us that wanted to enforce, like, I almost got into fights more than once because I go to a grocery store without a mask and I have some dude come talk to me and like, dude, I'm going to crush your face through this produce right now. But yeah, like they were so willing to enforce these ridiculous, like just ridiculous policies. And it also, the other thing I thought was weird was that like it also became like a badge, right? Show what team you're on, especially if you're driving around in your car with a mask. It turned into almost like this superstitious thing where it's like, your mask is your amulets that are going to ward off pestilence and evil spirits. It just was another badge of compliance, right? This is what team I'm on, and this is where I'm willing to go. And guess what? I'm a statist. I believe in the state to be able to tell me to do whatever I want. We should take your guns. We should be able to do this. And you're right. We also saw the progression, the slow progression, incrementalism, which was what the left loves, of like, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to have you stay in your house for a few days. And then we're just going to like close all schools, work, everything else. We're going to do that for a little bit. And now we're going to start going after churches. And now we're going to do this. And now we're going to force, the whole time we're being forced to wear masks. And then they're trying to force you to take a idiotic vaccine. And then they were making claims there's no way that they could substantiate like, hey, you know what? You won't get COVID. You can't spread COVID if you get this. Like, come on. Like anybody that look, I'm just telling you out there, folks, if you were unfortunate enough to swallow all that nonsense and you believed it, just know that you are extremely gullible. And I'm not telling you this to insult you or anything else. Just know that somebody dangles a little fear out there against you and you're willing to do anything. And you need to shore up your mind and need to have a little bit more psychological and mental discipline and realize that people are telling you nonsense nonstop. And you gotta, this goes back to individual rights, right? And that's what even people were saying, like, oh, no, your individual rights stop here. Like, no, actually they didn't stop here, and they don't. And that's the last thing that this government, both parties, by the way, they don't want you to have individual liberty. And that's what this channel is all about, is individual liberty, making sure that you can protect yourself, making sure that you are self-reliant. And ultimately, that's what we're about.
Yeah.
Con says people that were already scared of me before being told to wear masks, me wearing the mask terrified people. Yeah, still, I do too. I still see people wear masks. I just traveled recently in the airplane. There's like 6 people wearing masks. They're like that last Japanese holdout on the island 17 years later that thinks the war's still going on. All right. Well, listen, Chase, it was great to have you on. I think it was a great discussion. We hit a lot of stuff. Any final words that you want to leave the viewers with?
I mean, I'll say research for yourself, like we talked about a lot of things. And what if you gained anything out of this and you go research some stuff and figure out for yourself and like, oh, you know what? I do think I agree with that because I found this information. It's not because they said it. It's because I actually looked into it and now I kind of know a better answer, because then you learn a little bit more, and teaching yourself how to learn is important. Like every day I'm trying to learn something new. And so, the knowledge that I do have is because of the pursuit of that. It's not because I just want to follow and listen to what other people have to say about everything. I mean, it's important to listen to other people and what they have to say. But again, you have to take into account what's real and verifiable, and then formulate your opinion from there. So I think if we do that and we start, pushing that as a kind of a culture, that'll be big for us, and it'll help a lot of people get past the there's some really good propaganda out there that's would be a little harder to debunk, but there's a lot of the propaganda you can recognize and you could push back, pretty easily with not very much research. So just
I'd say 80% of it is pretty low IQ that you can like in a few seconds figure out the truth. And that's the problem. Going back to what you kind of brought up earlier, influencers. What they found out as a tool is that, you know what, people will believe whatever someone that they like says. And just like you said, sometimes it's not like nefarious. There's a lot of people out there that have big social media following that get tricked just like all of us. Like they find something, they don't do a lot of research on it. It usually, the way that we fall prey to this is that it confirms one of our biases, right? We latch onto it. We're like, oh, all right. And then we push it forward without a lot of research. So like, you got to challenge yourself. And I hope everybody out there that's watching this right now start listening to counterpoints, start learning to open up those lines of discourse again, as opposed to just attacking people. Don't be guilty of that. And, challenge your own beliefs. I think that's how we offset the capabilities of propaganda is through discussion, through your own research. And I don't know.
That's why Charlie was so effective, because he was willing to talk to anybody, and especially people he knew hated him and wanted to destroy his entire worldview and narrative. And I don't want to say narrative, he didn't have a narrative, but his entire the information that he's putting out. But he would still talk to him. He would still be calm. He wouldn't let him walk all over him. He's not going to sit there and just be like, oh, you can do whatever you want. But at the same time, he'd be like, no, this is factual. This is what's real. But I do have compassion for you because you're an American and I want us to succeed together. So, working towards that is important. So I appreciate Garrett. Thanks for having me on. It was awesome. Hopefully we can do it again sometime. And
absolutely. I'd love to have you back on. Sure. I'm sorry. I stepped on you.
I just say talking about all this stuff is super important. So, let's keep it going.
Absolutely. Folks. Just like we said tonight, YouTube didn't let us live stream. So make sure you go follow us on X. Make sure you go follow Chase on X as well. Again, all the links are down below in the description. I'm definitely going to be doing a lot more stuff on X and just kind of using that as a backup channel, if you will. And of course, we got Rumble and all the other things. But go follow us on X. I try to post on there. I'm trying to get better at posting on there. I don't really like it as a platform, but I think it's definitely the most free platform at the moment, to say the least. So I would also appreciate more followers on there, and that'll, anyways, we'll continue to do the things. Listen, folks, I want you to have a wonderful, wonderful night. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Chase, for coming on the show. You stay put. And everybody else out there, have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.